How to grieve the death of a loved one. It's Coot here, nationally best-selling author of You Are the One and The Magic of Surrender. Grieving the death of a loved one is never an easy thing. In fact, it can be very difficult, very heartbreaking. When my mother and my father passed away, in each instance it was tremendously hard. I went through so much grieving, but what I have found is that the only way through is through. And somehow in our culture today, what we have been conditioned to do is avoid grief at all costs. Grief is bad, grief is negative. We're often afraid to grieve because we believe that we won't come through the grief, that it will break us, it will be overwhelming, we won't make it through the grief. We often avoid the grief because we think that mistakenly it will last forever and ever, and it will go on and on and on, and we won't come out of it. Sometimes there's a sneaky thing that the ego does where we don't allow ourselves to grieve fully as a strategy of denial. There's this part of us that feels like if I don't allow myself to acknowledge the grief, then somehow I don't have to acknowledge that my loved one has really gone. And if I don't grieve and I don't acknowledge, I can be in denial and I can somehow still stay connected to them in some way. The grieving of the loved one, maybe it's your parent, maybe it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, a child, is never an easy thing. No matter how you slice it, there's no easy way to grieve. But what I want to assure you through my own lived experience is you will make it through. You will get through this moment. You will get through the grief. You will see the light again. When we block our grief and suppress our grief and distract our grief, maybe by workaholism or drinking it away, smoking it away, sexing it away, shopping it away, traveling it away, whatever it is, so we don't feel the grief doesn't go anywhere. We just suppress it and it sort of blocks our own connection to our heart, and layers and layers and layers of unfelt grief build up, and now we've lost that connection to our own feeling capacity. And so when we suppress the grief and deny the grief, we suppress and limit our capacity to feel. When we suppress our capacity for grief, we also suppress our capacity for joy, for happiness, for aliveness. And so many of us, unconsciously, unbeknownst to us, not intentionally, we are carrying around subtle layers of unfelt, unprocessed, unacknowledged grief. And we don't know why do I not feel alive? Why do I feel tired? Why do I feel a bit sad? Because a layer of grief, 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 another heartbreak, another death, and all of a sudden it builds up, and now we're so far removed from our own natural vitality and aliveness. When my mother passed away, I gave myself the space and the time to grieve. It's not like I wallowed in the grief. So allowing yourself to grieve isn't wallowing. It is allowing yourself the full permission to feel, because all feelings remain present until fully felt. No feeling lasts forever. Please remember, no feeling lasts forever. Grief, like all feelings, have a natural cycle. And when you allow yourself to feel your feelings fully, a layer of that feeling will dissolve. So I promise you, a layer will dissolve. And often the reasons why we're still carrying the grief or layers of grief is because we've not allowed ourselves to fully feel the grief. So all feelings remain present until fully felt. And so when my mother passed away, it was difficult, it was challenging. What I did intentionally was every night for months, I allowed myself grieving time. I would live my life, do what I needed to do, but for an hour, 2 a day, I would journal, and I would give myself the full permission to feel the fullness of the grief that was present. Sometimes it was just feelings. Sometimes it was physical. Sometimes I would just journal. Sometimes there would be tears. You know, when my mother passed away also, it felt like my heart broke open. And the thing is, because I allowed the space and time for my heart to break open, what I ended up finding was as my heart broke open, yes, the current shape of my heart broke open, but it wasn't as though my heart broke. The shape of my heart's capacity to love and feel broke open, and then there was more love. And it was like my heart expanded. And then there was another heartbreak, another wave of grief, and then there was more love. And so what I started to experience was, oh, my heart can never break. It breaks open to a bigger capacity to love. So when you deny the grieving, you deny your heart's capacity to love. And it's through the grieving that you find a deeper capacity to love and be loved. It is powerful. Grieving is the portal to freedom. Grieving is the portal to more love. Grieving is the portal to a deeper surrender. This is the key. Now, the last thing I'll say is, so give yourself the time to grieve, not just busy yourself, which we tend to do, and allow yourself to feel the grief, feel the feeling. Many times people say to me, but I allowed myself to grieve and I'm still in the grief. Chances are you're not grieving. Maybe you're wallowing, but you're not grieving. I said earlier, all feelings remain present until fully felt. Sometimes we think that we're grieving, but we're busy analyzing our feeling, or we're trying to get rid of it, we're analyzing it, we're trying to understand it, we're intellectualizing and thinking about the grief versus just feeling it by directly experiencing the grief. Now, so how do you grieve? Here's what I would say. Take the label off of the feeling. Don't even call it grief. Check into your body. Notice the sensations of the grieving in your body. Wow, I feel warmth in my stomach. There's a knot. There's a sensation that you will feel without labels. No labels. The warmth, the tightness, the sensation. Allow yourself to experience the feeling as pure sensation and energy in your body. Notice how it feels in your body, and when you allow yourself to feel the sensation in your body without judgment, without interruption, the sensation and the feeling will dissolve. A layer of it will dissolve, and the grief will unravel in layers and layers and layers. And sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years. So just know that when another layer of grief happens, nothing's wrong. If you can just be with it and allow yourself to be with the sensation, another layer dissolves and you are unraveling and freeing yourself from the layers of grief that are stored inside of you. Remember, you will make it through. No feelings last forever. All feelings that you feel fully will dissolve. And it's only through grieving that you're able to access the fullness of your heart's capacity to love. I hope you enjoyed this short video. Please share it with anyone in your life that might be going through some grieving, maybe the loss of a loved one, a loss. It could be a loss of a relationship as well, but share it with anyone in your life that you feel will benefit. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll catch you in the next video.